Nobody noticed when Lyra Sundown slipped through the maintenance door. That was the point. Kelwari had learned long ago that being invisible was safer than being seen. The premium dining hall of Waystation Pinnacle stretched before her like a palace from the old stories. Crystal tables floated on gravity platforms. Holographic menus danced in the air. Servitor drones carried dishes that cost more than she earned in a month. Lyra did not belong here. She knew that. Everyone knew that. But the labor quarters were flooded. A pipe had burst 6 hours ago, and she was assigned to fix it tomorrow. Tonight, there was nowhere else to eat. So she found the darkest corner, the table furthest from the light, and hoped no one would care about one tired sanitation worker eating her dinner. Her ration packet was small and gray. The synth paste inside tasted like nothing. But it was food, and she was hungry. The Kelwari were always hungry these days. 50 years ago, her people had a homeworld. Green forests, clean rivers, cities that sang with light. Then the mining corporations came. They took everything worth taking and left behind a dead rock floating in space. Now the Kelwari were scattered across the galaxy like dust, working jobs no one else wanted, living in places no one else would accept. Lyra tore open the packet and squeezed the paste on her tongue. It was cold and thick. She tried to eat quickly. She was not quick enough that a shadow fell across her table. Then another. Then 5 more. Counselor Brevin stood at the center of the group. He was Torvathi, tall and thin, with a shell-like body that clicked when he moved. His compound eyes reflected the light from 100 different angles. Behind him, his entourage spread out like a wall. "What does that smell?" Brevin asked. His voice was high and sharp, designed for giving orders. One of his companions leaned closer to Lyra's table. "It is coming from her food, Counselor. The refugee paste. I did not know they allowed that substance in premium areas." "They do not," Brevin said. "Or they should not. Yet here we are, trying to enjoy a civilized meal, and this creature brings her poverty to our table." Lyra kept her head down. Her skin, normally a soft blue glow, had begun to dim. Kelwari's skin responded to emotion and health. Right now, hers was telling everyone exactly how she felt. Afraid. Ashamed. Starving. "Look at her," another Torvathi said. "She is barely glowing. How long since she had a proper meal? A week? A month? Perhaps if her species had not squandered their world, they would not need to beg for scraps," Brevin replied. The group laughed. Lyra's hands trembled. She tried to squeeze more paste from the packet, but her fingers would not cooperate. The packet slipped. The gray synth paste spilled across the polished floor. The laughter grew louder. "She cannot even feed herself properly," someone said. "An accurate summary of her entire species," Brevin added. Lyra dropped to her knees. The paste was all she had until her next ration distribution in 3 days. She scraped at the floor with her 4 hands, trying to salvage what she could. The cleaning drones activated. Their sensors detected contamination. They began rolling toward her, ready to sanitize the spill and anything in their way, and O1 moved to stop them. The other patrons in the dining hall had noticed the scene by now. Some watched with curiosity. Some watched with disgust. Most simply looked away and continued eating, pretending nothing was happening. This was normal. This was how the galaxy worked. Some species mattered and some did not. The Kelwari had learned their place long ago. Lyra gathered what paste she could in her palms. Her skin had gone almost completely dark now. She could feel the heat of shame burning through her chest, the cold of hunger gnawing at her stomach. The drones were close. 10 seconds, maybe less. She did not have the strength to run. She did not have the pride to stand. She simply knelt there, waiting for the machines to push her aside like the garbage everyone believed she was. Brevin watched with satisfaction. "Let this be a lesson," he announced to the hall. "There's an order to things. A hierarchy. When lesser species forget their place, they embarrass themselves and inconvenience their betters. Perhaps next time, she will remember where refugees are meant to eat." Lyra closed her eyes. The drones hummed closer. The laughter continued, and then she heard something else, a scrape. Metal against floor. The sound of a chair being pulled across the polished surface. She opened her eyes. Someone was sitting down at her table. Danny Webb had been awake for 19 hours. His back hurt. His feet hurt. His hands were still cramped from wrestling cargo containers into their storage slots. All he wanted was a quiet meal and maybe 6 hours of sleep before the next shift started. The premium dining hall was not where he usually ate. But the labor cafeteria was closed for fumigation, and he had a meal voucher that would expire at midnight. So here he was, a tired human in worn work clothes, carrying a standard tray with bread, stew, and an apple he'd been saving for 3 days. He saw the crowd first. Then he heard the laughter. Then he saw the girl on the floor. She was Kelwari. Danny had worked with a few of them in the cargo bays. Quiet people, hard workers, skin that glowed when they were healthy and dimmed when they were not. This one's skin was almost completely dark. She was kneeling in spilled food, trying to scrape it up with her 4 hands while cleaning drones rolled toward her. A group of insectoid aliens stood over her, making comments that carried across the hall. Danny stopped walking. Other humans in the hall had noticed too. They kept their heads down, eating faster, pretending to see nothing. Danny understood why. Getting involved in species politics was a good way to lose your contract. A good way to get sent back to Earth with nothing. He thought about Mira. His little sister, sick in a hospital bed 4 years ago. The medical bills that had drowned their family. The neighbors who had shown up with food and money and help. Not because they had to, but because that was what people did where Danny came from. Nobody had asked if the Webbs deserved help. Nobody had demanded payment or made them beg. They just showed up. Danny looked at the Kelwari girl. She was alone. She was hungry. She was being treated like garbage. He made his decision that he did not walk toward the laughing crowd. He did not raise his voice or make demands. He simply walked to the table where the girl had been sitting, pulled up a chair, and sat down. The scrape of the chair cut through the laughter like a knife. Everyone turned to look. Danny set his tray on the table. He tore his bread in half and placed one piece on the empty side, across from himself. Then he picked up his spoon and began eating his stew. He did not look at the crowd. He did not look at the Kelwari girl. He just ate his dinner, calm and steady, as if nothing unusual was happening. The cleaning drones stopped. Their sensors were confused. The contamination was still there, but now a registered patron was in the area. They retreated to wait. Brevin's compound eyes swiveled toward Danny. Human, what do you think you were doing? Danny swallowed a bite of stew. Eating dinner. That creature was about to be removed. You are interfering with station protocol. Danny shrugged. I'm sitting at a table. There is no protocol against that. She does not belong in this hall. I do not see her name on any restricted list. Danny took another bite. I do not see your name on one either, but here we all are. Brevin's shell clicked with irritation. You would share a table with a Kelwari? With a refugee? Do humans have no standards at all? Danny finally looked up. His eyes were tired but steady. Where I come from, when someone is hungry, you feed them. That is our standard. Silence. The Kelwari girl had stopped scraping at the floor. She stared at Danny as if he had grown a second head. Her skin flickered, just slightly, like a candle trying to catch flame. Danny looked at her. He nodded toward the chair across from him and the bread waiting there. For a long moment, she did not move. Her whole life had taught her that kindness from strangers came with a price. That nothing was free. That hope was just another way to get hurt. But the human just sat there, eating his stew, asking nothing. Slowly, Lyra rose from the floor. Her legs shook. Her heart pounded. She walked to the table and sat down in the chair. The bread was warm. She picked it up with trembling hands and took a bite. It was the best thing she had tasted in months. Brevin made a sound of disgust. Barbaric, he said. Humans are as uncivilized as the refugees they apparently sympathize with. He turned and walked away, his entourage following. The laughter did not resume. Danny kept eating. Lyra kept eating. Neither of them spoke. But in the silence, something had changed. Lyra's skin began to glow, just a little brighter than before. The bread was gone too quickly. Lyra's body had been running on empty for so long that it devoured every crumb without permission. She sat there, staring at her empty hands, embarrassed by her own hunger. Danny noticed. Without a word, he pushed his bowl of stew across the table toward her. Lyra looked up. I cannot take that. Why not? Among my people, accepting food from a stranger creates a debt, an obligation. I would owe you something in return. Danny considered this for a moment. Then he shrugged. Where I come from, when someone is hungry and you have food, you share it. No debt, no obligation. That is the whole ritual. Lyra did not understand. In her experience, nothing was free. Everything had a price. The galaxy ran on transactions and hierarchies and knowing your place. But the human was not asking for anything. He was just offering. She took the bowl. The stew was lukewarm and oversalted, standard station food, but to her starving body, it tasted like a feast. She ate slowly this time, savoring each bite. Danny watched her without staring. He noticed how dim her skin remained, how her four hands still trembled, how her shoulders stayed hunched as if expecting another blow. "How long?" he asked quietly. "How long what? How long since you ate properly? Not ration paste. Real food." Lyra thought about it. The answer was shameful. 8 days. Maybe 9. The ration distributions were delayed. Station management said there were supply problems. 8 days. Danny's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed calm. "That is too long." "It is normal for Kelwari," Lyra said. "We are used to less. Being used to it does not make it right." She had no answer for that. They sat in silence for a while. The dining hall had returned to its normal sounds. Conversations, clinking utensils, the hum of servitor drones. The other patrons had decided that 2 workers sharing a meal was not interesting enough to keep watching. Danny reached into his pocket and pulled out the apple. It was small and slightly bruised, nothing special by any standard. But he had been saving it for 3 days, waiting for a moment when he really needed something good. He placed it on the table between them. "I have been carrying this around," he said. "Was going to eat it tonight, but I think you need it more." Lyra stared at the apple. Her people had legends about the human homeworld. They said Earth was covered in growing things, plants and trees and fruits that sprang from the soil without anyone forcing them to grow. She had never seen a real fruit in her life. "What is it?" "An apple. From Earth. A real one, not synthesized. It must be valuable. It cost me a week of extra shifts." Danny pushed it closer to her. "Go ahead. It is just sitting there." Lyra picked up the apple. It was heavier than she expected, cool and smooth against her palms. She brought it to her nose and breathed in. The smell was unlike anything she had encountered before. Sweet and clean and alive. She took a bite. The juice ran down her chin. The taste exploded across her tongue, bright and sharp and wonderful. She had to stop herself from crying. Danny watched her with a small smile. "Good. I did not know food could taste like this. Most food does, actually, when it is real. The station stuff is garbage." He paused. "When I was growing up, we had apple trees in our yard. My sister and I used to climb them and eat until our stomachs hurt." "Your sister?" "Mira. She's back on Earth. She got sick a few years ago. Really sick. The medical bills were more than my family could ever pay. That is why I took this contract. 10 years of work out here, and the debt gets cleared." Lyra lowered the apple. "You are here because of her. I am here because people helped us. Neighbors brought food. Friends gave money. Strangers donated to a fund they heard about online. We did not ask for any of it. They just showed up because that is what humans do. But you are repaying them? The ones who help." Danny shook his head. "You cannot repay kindness like that. The only thing you can do is pass it on. Help someone else when they need it." Lyra looked at the half-eaten apple in her hands. Then she looked at Danny, this tired human who had given away his dinner to a stranger because that was simply what he believed people should do. "Thank you," she said. The words felt too small, but they were all she had. Danny nodded. "Finish the apple. I need to get some sleep before my next shift." He stood up, leaving his empty tray on the table. Before he walked away, he paused. "Same time tomorrow." Lyra's skin flickered brighter. "Yes." Danny smiled just a little and walked toward the exit. Behind him, Lyra sat alone at the table, holding an apple from Earth, glowing softly in the artificial light. 3 days after the incident in the dining hall, Danny received a summons. He was to report to the administrative level immediately. Failure to comply would result in contract termination, that he knew what this was about. The office of Overseer Pollux Crane was on level 47, far above the cargo bays and maintenance tunnels where Danny spent his days. The walls were actual metal instead of cheap composite. The air smelled clean instead of recycled. Everything about it said power. Crane sat behind a curved desk covered in holographic displays. He was human, middle-aged, with gray at his temples and tired eyes. A career administrator who had climbed the ladder by following rules and avoiding trouble. Danny Webb, Crane said, reading from a file. Cargo handler. Contract worker. 4 years into a 10-year term. Clean record until now. Danny stood at attention. Yes, sir. Do you know why you are here? I have an idea. Crane tapped one of the displays. A recording began to play. Danny saw himself walking through the dining hall, pulling up a chair, sitting down across from Lyra. The audio captured Brevin's complaints and Danny's responses. Counselor Brevin has filed a formal grievance, Crane said. He claims you disrupted social harmony in a premium dining area. He claims you showed disrespect to a registered diplomat. He is demanding your contract be terminated and you be deported back to Earth immediately. Danny felt his stomach drop. If he lost the contract, the debt would remain. Mira would lose the house. Everything his family had sacrificed would mean nothing. What do you have to say for yourself? Crane asked. Danny thought carefully before speaking. I sat down at a table and ate my dinner. I shared some food with someone who was hungry. I did not raise my voice. I did not threaten anyone. I did not break anything. You interfered with station social protocols. Which protocols, sir? Crane paused. He looked at the file again, scrolling through pages of regulations. The complaint cites section 14.7, which prohibits disruptive conduct in premium public spaces. Was I disruptive? Crane played the recording again. On screen, Danny sat quietly eating stew while Brevin shouted and gestured. The contrast was obvious. One person was calm. The other was not. The counselor seems more disruptive than you do, Crane admitted. I was just eating dinner, sir. Other people chose to react. That is not the same as me causing a disruption. Crane leaned back in his chair. He studied Danny for a long moment. The overseer was not a cruel man. He had taken this job because it paid well and kept him away from the politics of Earth. But he had also been a contract worker once, decades ago. He remembered what it felt like to be powerless. Why did you do it? Crane asked. His voice was quieter now, less official. You knew the risks. You knew how species like the Torvathi treat anyone who challenges their hierarchy. Why stick your neck out for a Kelwari you had never met? Danny thought about the question. He could give a practical answer. He could say he was not thinking clearly because he was tired. He could apologize and promise to behave better. But that would be a lie. She was hungry, Danny said simply. I had food. Where I come from, that is all you need to know. Crane was silent. My sister got sick when I was 22, Danny continued. Cancer. The treatment cost more than my parents had made in their entire lives. We thought we were going to lose everything. Then people started showing up. Neighbors with casseroles, co-workers with donation jars, strangers who heard about us online and sent money just because they could, and you think that obligates you to help others. No, sir. I think it shows me how the world is supposed to work. You help people because they need help, not because you will get something back, not because they deserve it more than someone else, just because helping is the right thing to do. Crane stared at his desk for a long time. The holographic displays flickered and hummed. Outside the window, ships moved through the darkness of space, carrying cargo and passengers and the endless commerce of 1,000 worlds. Finally, the overseer made his decision. The complaint is dismissed, Crane said. Section 14.7 requires evidence of disruption. The recording shows you eating quietly while the counselor made a scene. If anything, he disrupted social harmony, not you. Danny exhaled. Thank you, sir. Do not thank me. I am following the regulations. Crane paused. But off the record, what you did in that dining hall matters. Not because it changed policy or defeated prejudice, but because that Kelwari woman will remember that someone saw her. Someone treated her like she was worth sitting with. Danny nodded. Now get back to work, Crane said, and try not to start any more diplomatic incidents. Danny walked out of the office with his contract intact, but as he rode the elevator back down to the cargo levels, He realized something had changed. He was not going to stop. Word spread through the station like water through cracks in a wall. A human had shared his meal with a Kelwari refugee. He had faced down a Torvathi counselor without raising his voice. He had kept his job despite the complaint. The story changed as it traveled. Some versions made Danny a hero. Others made him a fool. But everyone agreed on one thing. Something unusual had happened, and the hierarchy had not punished it. Other humans began to notice that in the labor cafeteria, a mechanic named Greta saved his seat for a Kelwari co-worker who usually ate alone in the corner. It was a small thing, just an empty chair and a wave. But the Kelwari woman sat down, and they ate together, and nothing bad happened. A pilot named Rami shared his water rations with a refugee family during a supply delay. He had extra. They had none. It was simple math that a cargo supervisor started assigning Kelwari workers to better shifts with shorter hours and more breaks. Nobody complained. The work still got done. The Kelwari worked harder than ever because someone had finally treated them like they mattered. None of these acts were grand or revolutionary. They were just people being decent in small ways, one moment at a time. Council Brevin noticed that he filed more complaints. He demanded meetings with station management. He warned that humans were undermining the natural order of things, spreading their barbaric customs, treating lesser species as equals when the entire galaxy knew they were not. But each incident was too small to prosecute. Sharing a seat was not a crime. Giving away water was not forbidden. Being kind was not against the rules. Brevin began to understand the real danger. It was not rebellion. It was not protest. It was something far worse. That it was normalization, that if humans kept acting as if the hierarchy did not exist, others might start believing it did not have to exist. Meanwhile, Lyra's life had changed. Her skin glowed brighter now. She stood straighter when she walked through the corridors. When other workers made comments about Kelwari refugees, she did not shrink away. She looked them in the eye and kept moving. She had been promoted to a better position, not because of politics or favoritism, but because her supervisor had noticed how hard she worked. For the first time in years, she was earning enough to eat properly every day, but she still thought about Danny. She had not seen him since that night in the dining hall. Different shifts, different sections of the station, ships passing in the darkness, until one day, she found him as he was sitting on a cargo crate in Base 17, eating a sandwich during his break. He looked tired, the same as always. His clothes were still worn. His hands were still calloused. Nothing about him seemed special, but he was. Danny Webb, Lyra said as he looked up. Recognition flickered in his eyes. Lita, the dining hall. You remember. Hard to forget. He gestured to a nearby crate. Want to sit? She sat. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Ships hummed in the docking ports around them. Workers shouted orders in a dozen languages. The universe continued its endless motion. I brought you something, Lyra said. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small container. Inside was a dish made from her own rations, prepared using a traditional Kelwari recipe her mother had taught her before the homeworld died. What is this? Danny asked. My turn to share. She placed the container on the crate between them. Among my people, this is how we honor those who have fed us. We cook for them. We give back what we received. Danny looked at the food. It was unfamiliar, purple and thick, with small grains floating in the mixture. But he picked up the spoon she offered and took a bite. It was good. Different from anything he had tasted before, but good. Thank you, he said. They ate together in the cargo bay, sharing the dish until it was empty. Other workers passed by and saw them. Some stopped to watch. A few pulled up their own crates and joined them. Can I ask you something? Lyra said. Sure. Why did you do it? That night, you risked everything. Your contract, your sister, your whole future, for someone you did not know. Danny thought about the question. He had been asked it before, by Crane, by other workers, by people who could not understand why anyone would sacrifice comfort for a stranger. Because that is what people did for me, he said finally. When my family needed help, people showed up. They did not ask if we deserved it. They did not wait for us to beg. They just showed up and shared what they had. He paused. The only way to repay something like that is to pass it on. Help the next person. Build the world you want to live in. Lyra's skin glowed softly in the dim light of the cargo bay. I think I understand now, she said. Humans are not strong because of your technology or your armies. You are strong because you take care of each other. Danny smiled. We try. Around them, the table of crates had grown. Workers from a dozen species sat together, sharing food and conversation. It was not much, just a small circle of people being decent to each other. But it was a start. 1 year had passed since a tired cargo worker pulled up a chair in a premium dining hall. The station had changed, not through laws or protests, but through erosion. The old walls between species had worn thin from thousands of small kindnesses. Humans kept sitting where they wanted. They kept sharing tables. Other species began joining them. The premium dining hall still existed. The hierarchy still had rules and regulations. But in practice, the lines had blurred until they barely mattered. Counselor Brevin still filed complaints. His faction still held meetings and made speeches about the proper order of things. But fewer people listened. The future was being built by workers sharing meals in cargo bays, not by diplomats arguing in conference rooms. Lyra Sundown had been promoted to maintenance supervisor. She managed a team of 30 workers from 12 different species. Her skin glowed bright and steady, the color of a healthy ocean under a warm sun. She had reconnected with some of her scattered family through station contacts. A cousin worked on a trading vessel. An aunt had found a new home on a colony world. The Kelwari were still refugees. Their homeworld was still dead, but they were no longer invisible. Danny Webb stood in his quarters, looking at the stars through his viewport. His contract was nearly complete. 6 more months, and he would have served his 10 years. The debt would be cleared. Mira would be freed that he could go home. There was a knock at his door. He opened it to find Overseer Crane standing in the corridor. Can I come in? Crane asked. Danny stepped aside to let him enter. The overseer looked around the small room, at the bare walls and the narrow bed and the single photograph of a farm in Nebraska pinned above the desk. Your contract is almost up, Crane said. 6 months. I have a proposition for you. Crane handed Danny a data pad. Permanent position. Labor Relations Coordinator. Better pay. Better quarters. A real career instead of contract work. Danny looked at the numbers on the screen. It was more money than he had ever imagined earning. Enough to help his family back on Earth. Enough to build a real life out here among the stars. Why me? He asked. Because of what you started. The share meals. The mixed tables. The way humans on this station treat everyone like equals. Crane paused. The company wants to encourage that. Turns out workers who feel valued work harder and cause fewer problems. You understand that better than anyone. Danny set the data pad on his desk. He did not answer right away. That night, he found Lyra in the cargo bay. She was finishing her shift, checking inventory on a stack of containers. Her team had already gone home. She was alone when Danny approached. I heard about the job offer, she said. Everyone is talking about it. The human who pulled up a chair is being promoted to management. I have not accepted yet. Why not? Danny leaned against a cargo crate. I keep thinking about Nebraska, about my sister, about the apple trees we used to climb. He paused. Part of me wants to go home, see the sky without metal walls around it, breathe air that does not taste like recyclers. Lyra nodded. She understood homesickness better than most. But then I think about this place, Danny continued, about all the Lyras who will come through here next year and the year after. Refugees and workers and people who need someone to sit with them. If I leave, maybe the next Danny will not show up. Maybe the chair will stay empty. You cannot save everyone. No, but I can save the ones in front of me. He looked at her. What do you think I should do? Lyra considered the question carefully. You have already done what matters. You reminded me that I was worth sitting with. Whether you stay or go, that will not change. But I hope you stay. She smiled, her skin glowing warm and bright. The station still needs people willing to pull up a chair. Danny made his decision that night. He unpacked the bag he had started filling. He signed the contract Crane had offered. He sent a message to Mira telling her that he would visit when he could, but his work was not finished yet. 6 months later, Danny Webb walked into the premium dining hall. It was crowded now, filled with workers and traders and travelers from 100 worlds. The tables were mixed. The hierarchy had not disappeared, but it had weakened. He found a large table near the center of the room. Lyra was already there, along with Greta and Rami and a dozen others. They had saved him a seat. Danny sat down and started eating. The conversation flowed around him, jokes and stories and complaints about management. It felt like a family dinner back on the farm, everyone talking over each other while the food got cold. Near the entrance, Danny noticed a small figure standing alone. A Kelwari child, newly arrived with her refugee family, clutching a ration packet and staring at the crowded hall with frightened eyes. Danny caught her eye. He smiled and gestured to an empty chair at his table. The child hesitated. Lyra reached out and took her hand, guiding her gently toward the seat. "Come," she said. "There is room. There is always room." The child sat down. Someone passed her bread. Someone else poured her water. The conversation continued as if she had always been there. Outside the viewport, the stars burned cold and distant. The galaxy was vast and often cruel. But in this small corner of the universe, around one crowded table, the world was exactly as it should be. The table had grown, and it would keep growing one chair at a time.